Hey everyone.
Hello.
Good afternoon and welcome back to Reference Roundtable. I'm Sarah and with me is Michael and Lacey. And we're back for another episode. And today is the last week of the month, so we like to do our book club usually at the end of the month. So if you haven't guessed by now, since I'm in the middle, it's my pick this month. And we are talking about Three Girls from Bronzeville, and the subtitle is A Uniquely American Memoir of Race, Fate, and Sisterhood, and it's by Dawn Turner. So we'll just dive right in and see what you guys think about this.
I feel like I need to say this right away because I don't read memoirs unless it's like somebody I really care about, like a favorite actor, actress, or singer that I'm like really invested in. I just don't read memoirs. So I was very like, we'll see. I loved it. I started it and I was kind of like, memoir. Oh, we're gonna read about our childhood. It totally sucked me in. Like after reading about 20% of the book, I'm like, I gotta know what's going on, and I just read the last half of it. I think I read it in a day. I was just like, I gotta know. I kept picking it up.
It's written really well.
It really reads like a novel too, doesn't it?
Yeah. It feels very literary.
Yeah, and I read tons of memoirs. I love to read books, especially about experiences that I haven't experienced, just because it gives me a glimpse into other people's lives and things that I know nothing about. So
I think that's honestly what got me, what kind of hooked me to this book is, Bronzeville is another name for a part of Chicago.
Yes.
So that's where these three girls are growing up in, and you're finding out about their lives. And obviously never lived in Chicago. I think they were all born in the 70s. Was that right?
Yeah.
So a little bit older than me too as well.
Yeah.
So that, that's another different side of it. And,
Bronzeville's very, it's in the south side of Chicago. So it's very much like a project.
Yeah.
It's the projects.
She lives in the Ida B. Wells home.
Yes.
Or houses. Yeah. And I looked those up, and it's there's apartment buildings, townhouses. It's a whole community, but it's not there anymore. No. It was destroyed in the 2000s.
Yes.
Yeah, it was cool.
So we should probably tell who the three girls are.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So you wanna.
So Dawn Turner, the author, is actually one of the girls, and then her younger sister Kim, and their friend Deborah, and where Kim, it's been a little while since I've read it. So, but Dawn and Deborah were about the same age, right?
Yeah, they were in the same class at
they
school.
were in the same grade.
Because they had the naughty photos together.
Yes. And then Kim kind of hung around them too because they were pretty close in age.
But she was just a little younger.
Yeah, she was a year or two younger, so not a big difference.
And Deborah lived above them.
Yeah, exactly, in the apartment above Dawn and Kim.
Dawn.
Yes.
And they didn't find that out right away. They didn't find that out until they were friends. I thought that was really fun.
Yeah. So they're kind of just kids coming of age, trying to figure out what the adults in their lives are doing. And
you very much get a feeling for living in Bronzeville too. She really describes what the apartment building was what the kind of the feel of the community was.
Yeah, it's
what it was like to be outside and seeing other people and running around.
And you get she spends enough time with the neighborhood too that you get to watch it change throughout the course of the book. And then I remember, I was very young at the time, but I knew the story about the kid who was dropped out the window by the other kids in the project. That was 1994, and that was in Bronzeville, and that was covered in the book. But that's the whole time I was wondering if that was going to come up, because that's when the federal government took over the Chicago Housing Authority because it was just so poorly kept.
Yeah. So there's a lot going on. They go to school together.
Yeah.
Their parents have issues.
Yeah. She's really good at going back to her child perspective though.
Yeah.
It also feels like you are reading it through the eyes of her when she's at the different ages she's at throughout the book. So I don't know. I really appreciated watching how things change throughout it, and I think that's what she said. There's one part when she tells somebody and they're like, there I go, but from the grace of God, that saying that's like, it could have been
there,
me.
But for the grace of God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just like, how you can't really predict the future, because she had so much envy. I felt like, well, not, I mean, maybe that's not the right word, but she was like kind of envious of Deborah, like at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah was very much like very in charge, very like bossy, knows what she likes, and she was always like the pretty girl in class. You know, everybody wanted to be Deborah. She was the pretty girl,
like the lead. She was kind of like the leader. She was, like outgoing and like.
One of my favorite parts is when Dawn and Deborah, they were in the laundry room at their apartments, and they found an envelope that was stashed under there with like naked pictures in it. And then they got in trouble because Deborah convinced her to like take it to school.
Mm-hmm.
And then they couldn't hang out together for a while. But it's just like, it's like a good combination of like silly trouble that kids get in.
Everyone
everywhere.
Gets in, like.
But then like this like structural institutional trouble that's like really shocking. And so putting the two together, I don't know, I thought it was really compelling.
Yeah.
There was something very like different about it, like different from like my experience growing up, but also the same.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what gets you into it to start with. Because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're all like little, and you know, you don't like make the best choices, you know, when you're 8, you know, 'cause you're just figuring things out. And we've all had that. But then to like growing up, you know, I didn't grow up in anywhere like that. I grew up in a much smaller town than Chicago, you know, definitely didn't even have the same feel. But as they grow up, you really, I kept coming back to the subtitle, The American Memoir of Race, Fate, and Sisterhood, because it really did have all of those feelings to it. These were 3, you know, Black girls, then teenagers, then women, and you really saw how, you know, things played in their lives, their gender, their race, their socioeconomic class, if you really want to dig deep. Like all of those things really affected their lives in good ways, in bad ways, in just, you know, not even always just good and bad, just sometimes just stuff happens, you know.
And differently to all 3 of them too.
Yes.
Like
that's what I found to be the most interesting aspect of the book. And I think that's probably kind of why she wrote it, was just because these 3 girls, they kind of all grew up similar, had similar experiences growing up, but they each took very different paths in life, extremely different paths in life. So
did either of you have favorites? Like, did you have a favorite of the 3? I did.
I mean, I liked Dawn a lot, just because
Dawn.
she was, of course, she's like the main character.
Yeah.
If you want to call it, you know, a story. I really like Deborah, though.
Deborah's my favorite.
She just like, I don't know. She had just like so much life, you know, and like attitude, and I don't know.
I loved Deborah.
You knew if they were talking about her or she was doing something crazy or interesting was going to happen.
Yeah.
Her
story was like lively, but also like really touching at parts too. Like, it's tough to talk about her story without spoiling anything.
Yeah.
But there's a part where she's writing letters back and forth with someone who she's wronged, and like it's a really sweet relationship. It's like, I don't know.
And we don't have to spoil it, but like I know I believe it's in the summary. I don't know if it's in the book jacket or in the summary, like online, if you go on Amazon or the publisher's website. But there's teen pregnancy in here. There's, you know, people growing up and going to college. There's a murder.
Yeah, there's death.
Death. You know, I mean, there's everything. There's jail.
There's
you know, and that's not giving anything away. That's all in the summary. But like, just all of life happens in this book.
Yeah.
Having kids,
college and struggling with academics and divorce. Just
it's very candid.
It has everything.
It has all of life's ups and downs.
I'm not sure this is a spoiler. It's a plot detail though, but a scene that like sticks out to me that I remember is the part where Dawn calls the police on her sister, and then her sister and her mom like don't talk to her for a while, and I'm like kind of on their side. I don't know, like I get it, like your kid sister's like staying out past curfew and like drinking or whatever, but like to call the police on your sister. Is
it like a betrayal of family?
It seems like a betrayal of family, and also like you don't know how that interaction's going to go.
Yeah,
like she could have been killed. You know what I mean? And I don't think Dawn like really thought that through. And there's times like I don't know. I think Dawn was my least favorite. If that's a fair thing to say. I appreciate how candid she was, but sometimes I felt like she got like this like weird complex of like not holier than thou, but like
she's by the book.
She's
a by the book human being.
Yeah.
She's like, I'm gonna do right. I am gonna follow the rules. So I can see that, you know.
Yeah.
The other people in the book are bringing more drama.
Definitely.
We did get a comment, so I just want to share it real quick. Harriet says, "You're definitely making me want to read it."
Oh, good. Yeah.
Like I said,
I recommend it.
I feel like that's one of the best things you can say about a memoir is like, I don't even read memoirs and I liked it.
And I may have just said that she's my least favorite character in her own memoirs, but Dawn Turner's a really good writer.
She really is.
She wrote for the Tribune too, so she's like was a journalist, I think, before this.
Yeah.
And then she had some fiction books that I had heard of. I just didn't put the name together. But I really like the way she discussed like how she tells these stories and how like I don't know if you would call it like the beat she was on, but like she had to write a lot about like inner city Chicago and these things where she's like, I don't want to exploit where I come from. How do I like talk about it and do honor? Because there's a part where she's like talking about the way people ask her about Deborah was like really offensive to her. And so like, how did she convey that story and like do it with love, but also still show like the darker side of like the story as well. And I think she succeeded in that. Like they're all like so rendered so human. Like she renders them in their full humanity.
She's so even.
Yeah.
She doesn't try and paint anyone as like this super evil person that deserves what they got, and nor does she, you know, gloss over anybody's, I think, fault. She's just very much like, here's humanity.
Yeah.
You know, this is our lives.
Yeah.
This is what happened.
Right.
And this basically any of those things could happen to anyone, just because they all started off the same, and just little decisions, little choices, little things that happen in your life. One little thing can make you go on a way different path. And because that's what she's saying, like this could have been me, you know, just as easily as her sister Deborah.
And that's really and you really get to know these three, like we said, girls, teens, women. I think she pretty much goes up to almost like
today,
modern day, you know, within the last few years. So I mean, you really, you know, she doesn't just stop when like it's college time or something like that when they are like 18 or 20. You get to find out like all of it.
And then I honestly I get so curious about people after I read about them. So I like look into more things, and I like found Deborah on Facebook, like her real Facebook. And it was like, and you could go back through her timeline and see like some of the events that were happening in like real time. And I'm like, this is like, it just solidified it even more. Like she wrote that her as a real person.
Nice.
This is like, this is a real.
Cool
and genuine. So I'm just really like that.
It made me research Bronzeville, and I went down like a rabbit hole looking at the history of the neighborhood, and the Ida B. Wells, like the house that she actually lived in was so cool, and it's apartments now. It's like a historic building, but I think you can also it's also an apartment building. And I always think stories about the projects are super fascinating. Like you know who like Robert Moses is? He was a city planner who was really big on like these tower projects.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like all these ideas that were so poorly thought out, and like the idea of trying to make people fit into architecture versus architecture fitting the needs of the people. It's like this whole way of thinking that was so popular in like the last century that just has not worked out well for people, because a lot of, I mean, it's
it sounds like you need to read a book on architecture and how it fits in with people's lives.
Oh, I have. It's the Death and Life of Great American Cities by Jane Jacobs.
I remember you brought that up before.
It's like an excellent book, and it touches on a lot of like.
You can make a book display of like
for sure
books that fit together.
Well,
like
and
that.
it ties into issues of like gentrification, urban planning, food deserts. I think she mentions that, like, just like how where you are can affect like what decisions you even have access to.
Absolutely.
Like,
yeah. I mean, I just like, that's why it was so hard for me sometimes, I think, to like envision some things in this book, because I was really fortunate. Like my parents had a house,
Right.
and I had a yard
Yeah.
with green grass and trees. I lived a block away from a giant park that had like a river running through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just things that I never even thought about, like, when you're 8 years old, you're like, not everyone has a park next door. You just don't think about that.
Right.
But they obviously lived in an inner city, big city, and just how even that can change kind of how you grow up. Just those little things.
Well, and how they, like, just the way she portrays them when they were younger, how they really loved how they lived in an apartment building with kids their age, and they could just, run to each other's apartments. And it was almost this, because obviously it was pretty much the same layout. So it was like almost being at home when they were at their friend's
and talking
house.
about like how they would explore the buildings and like climb to the top of them and find all the little secret, little places where they could like, they had a box. I don't remember what they called it, but it was like their little like stash of like cool trinkets that they found. And I think they had that somewhere around the building.
Yeah, and they
like
had notes that they would hide under the carpet too or something.
Yeah, outside their doors. Yeah, so.
Yeah, isn't that where they hid the dirty pictures? And they got in trouble.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I love this book, honestly, and like I love the beginning of it. It did take a little bit to get into it, but yeah, once I felt like I knew them. I'm like, I have to know what happens with them.
She does a good job of laying the groundwork. Yeah. So that's why I think that's why I think the beginning can seem a little slow at first, but I mean, you have to get to know them. You got to start at the beginning. Here's a girl, here's her sister, here's their friend. Maybe it's not exciting to hear about what like 5-year-olds are doing at school, but it does have an effect. I mean, I can think of the teachers that I had, like the elementary school teachers that really made an impact.
Right.
I can still tell you what they look like and what their name was.
And I think like the second half of the book is so much more impactful because we've been with the characters, or not I shouldn't be calling them characters. They're real people because we've been with them since they were children.
Yes.
Like, it adds an emotional weight to everything that happens later.
There were emotional parts. Like I was very invested in the book, and there were parts that were shocking and like very emotional for me, but that makes a good read for me.
Yeah, like there are parts where I was like, I was rooting for you. Like, I'm still rooting for you.
Yeah.
Or when something bad happened and you were like, no, why?
Right.
I mean, I think that's why I keep calling it a story. Because, I mean, it's obviously it's real, but it is like, I don't know. This sounds really, cliche, but we all have like a story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their story is just like.
Well, and I think for me anyway, when I know it's a true story, it's even more impactful.
Yeah.
Because I know this is happening to real people.
Yeah.
So we did get a comment from Anne. Lovely Anne says, another must-read book on my list.
I think you will really like it, Anne. I really do.
Yeah, it's just so well crafted.
And you listened to the audiobook.
I did.
Right?
Yeah.
Who read the audiobook? Was it her or was it somebody else?
It was not her. I can't remember the woman's name.
That's a bummer. I would have liked to have heard it in her voice.
It is it was good.
It was good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is always better when the author reads their own book, especially a memoir or biography.
Mm-hmm. I feel like a memoir, it's just like it should be a rule. You have to read
it.
I don't know. It just seems so much more impactful.
Feels like you're
coming from the voice of the person who wrote it. So,
either way, it's an excellent read.
Yes.
And it is available as an e-audiobook on Libby. I think an ebook as well.
Ebook, and we have.
And it was your check it out, right? You did a check it out.
Yes, I went to look for the book this morning, and I couldn't find it on the shelf, and it was because it was on the check it out display. So that's where it's going back.
So it should be pretty easy to find here at the main branch.
Yeah,
if you know where the check it out display is, you can always.
Yep, it's right when you walk in the door from the west door from the parking lot downtown. So
I am also really ashamed to say how long it took me to realize that these weren't smudges, but they were faces. It's probably hard to see on here, but you can kind of see these like coppery,
It's like they're
I just thought it was like artistic, like smudges, and I was like, oh, it's faces. So
we should do a Rorschach test with you next reference roundtable. Like, Lacey, what do you see?
Smudge.
Although I can't tell which one is which, but yeah, it's a cool cover.
Highly recommend. highly recommend. I
Yeah.
think is basically if you're taking anything away from this episode.
I like that it was two sisters and a friend too. Like it
It was like a family, but then some.
Mhm.
I think
Okay.
that.
Anne wants to know, what do you think is best, read or listen to this book?
Ooh. I don't know. I'm very pro read.
I honestly would think either one.
Yeah.
There is some like formatting in the book that like I didn't. Let me, if I can find an example. Oh, like like things that are written out like letters, italicized, and I guess that like, you probably can't see it on the screen.
I don't know.
Either
There's
way,
really
I
a
think
wrong
yeah.
answer for
No,
this
yeah.
one. There's some that are definitely one or the other, but I don't think there's really a wrong answer.
I think I liked it as an audiobook because it is like it did remind me of like listening to a podcast since it's
Like just listening to a story, but it's a really quick read.
Yeah.
I read the print book too, and it's a quick read.
for the amount of life that's in this book. It is like very like
Yeah.
it's very tightly written. That's another reason I think it was just crafted so expertly.
Mm-hmm.
I liked reading it because I was just like, give me more. Like, what happens? What happens?
Yeah, that's how I felt too. Like once I got going, I was like, okay, I can't. I gotta
Give it to me.
I gotta see what's going on here. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Should we announce the next book since we've picked our next book to talk about?
Go for it.
Yeah.
So it's my pick. So if you hate it, you know who to come at. But for next month, so I'm guessing probably the end of the month
September.
of September. So
Mhm.
last Thursday of September. So you have plenty of time to read it.
29th, I believe.
I can't believe we're talking about September.
Yeah.
So we're going to be reading The Guide by Peter Heller.
It was
So-
a summer reading book.
We have
If
lots
you-
of
if you-
copies, so that's really
Yes.
nice.
Yeah, you can read along with us.
And
It's
I've
like-
already started reading it.
It has one of my
I like
favorite
it.
book covers of like the last few years. I'm
Honestly,
obsessed
that's what
with the
got
cover.
me the first. Like,
It's
I
a
was like,
great
I
cover.
think I want to read this book because it's beautiful. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so The Guide by Peter Heller. If you want to get a head start,
Get started.
I've started reading it, and it's super, like it's even quicker than this.
Yeah.
It is a super duper fast read.
What genre would you
So-
call like?
It's kind of weird because it's kind of a mix,
Mhm.
but I'm gonna say it's probably the thrillery. But it's not your like. It's a very slow burn thriller. It's not like seat of your pants as soon as you start. It's like action. It's it's very like, what's going on? It seems okay. It seems normal, but it's not. So it's very slow building. And I haven't hit like, I don't know what they're doing yet. I just know something's going on.
Nice. I'm excited to start that one.
I think it'll be interesting.
really good.
Hopefully
It's a book
good to
about
talk
fishing,
about.
like a fishing place.
Yes.
Because in my head, I'm like,
Yep.
there's something fishy at the fishing resort.
So give it a try and
Yeah.
we'll talk about it in a month.
Yeah, I'm excited to start that one.
Yes. I thought it'd be nice and different from our
Yeah.
thoughtful memoir.
That's what we've been trying to pick, like a variety.
Yes.
So,
So next month we'll do a nice fiction title.
Yes.
Cool.
Cool. All right. Sounds good. And of
We're
course,
done.
we'll be here next week.
Mhm.
It's usually new books, new month, but we'll see. The website where we order our books from has been down all week. So sad news about that.
We
So
may not have
new books next week to show, but we will definitely show them at some point.
We could flip
In the
book
month.
drop and new books.
Yeah,
if
we
have
may do an interview.
to. Oh.
Yeah.
So,
So
stay
we'll have
tuned.
something fun.
It'll be
Yeah. You'll
It'll
find
be a
out
surprise.
next week.
Yes. So, but make sure you join us. And we love to see your comments and add you into the conversation. So keep the comments coming even after our episode. If you watch later, we'd still love to see what you have to say about the book or if you're going to read it. If you have any suggestions for us, we'd love that too. You can message us on here or send us an email to questions@siouxcitylibrary.org as well. So until next week, we will see you then.
Keep
See
reading.
ya.
Bye.
Bye everyone.